All, everyone for being here tonight. This is our January 16th Bowling Green Warren County Planning Commission. If you all are here, we've had some items, just so you're not here for the items that have been withdrawn. Item number 3, SVJ Development, care of John Groves, a application for Louisville Road has been withdrawn. So, and then item number 5, SKYE Properties, care of Kerry Jones on the southwest corner of Oak Grove Way and Tall Timber Avenue has been withdrawn. David Buchanan and Judy Buchanan on Mount Victor Lane has been postponed. The other one was postponed. And then the J.R.R. Head Street Trust in Smiths Grove, care of Jeremy Riggs, 55 acres on the west side of Head Street, intersection of Head Street and First Street, has been withdrawn. So if you were here to, for those cases, they have been withdrawn. So just wanted to let you know that. So, all right. Matthew, if you would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bollinger, Commissioner Cassida, Commissioner Sissel,
Here.
Commissioner Drain,
Here.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Here.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. Commissioners, you have the minutes of our January the 2nd meeting in your packets. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we call for a motion, please.
To move. Motion that the minutes be approved.
Second.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitale,
Abstain.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sissel,
Abstain.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Abstain.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. Commissioners, you had the subdivision site development plans that were mailed out in your packets. Are there any questions? Then they will be approved as submitted. Our first new business item tonight, Megan.
Hello. I've got a quick budget update for you guys. So we have finished out half of our fiscal year so far, and everybody should have a copy of the December budget statement in your packet for tonight, and I'll just quickly go through that. Again, the best way for me to update you guys on this is just to go through the year-to-date percentage of budget. If you'll look at our total income so far for this fiscal year, we're at 46%. Ideally, we would like to be right at 50%, so we're a little bit behind, but as you guys know, MPO funding usually is heavier in the last half of the year. There's also the possibility that we might have a couple of our MPO projects not finish up this year and may carry forward to next year. If we do, I'll do a slight budget amendment for that, but it's a little too early to tell what those numbers are going to be. But I've already started working on next year's budget. If we scroll down and look at our expenses, our total personnel, we're right at 50.8%. We're looking good on that. If we go to the next page and look at our total expenditures, we're at 44.4% for this so far for the year. That's less than 50%, which is ideal. The only category that we're a little bit over 50% on is our contractual services. And that's because, again, we paid our insurance in one lump sum payment at the beginning of the year. Other than that, we're looking pretty good. If we go to the very last page, just want to bring your attention to our surety account balance and our operating account balance. Our surety account balance, we've got $1.2 million in that. Just want to point out, As of July 1, we were at 2.4 million, so we've reduced that by half, which is a great thing. That means that people are getting their projects done, we're releasing those cash bonds out. The only downside to that is our interest income's gonna be lower, but we can live with that. That's pretty much all the updates I've got for you guys. Can I answer any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for Megan? As always, does a great job.
That's great.
So we don't need a motion. Just-
We do,
We do.
yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is there a motion to
So moved.
approve our semi-annual budget for tonight?
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sissel,
Yes.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. Commissioners, in your packets were our letters of credit and performance bond, and you have, each of us have a new updated list of the, there's 9 of them, performance and credit and performance bonds. Are there any questions? I think Megan covered that. And so are there any questions? Would call for a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sissel,
Yes.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Matthew. We will now enter into our public hearing. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Dean, as you call me.
Yes, Hamp?
I request that you order that the record include all statutory and regulatory provisions, the Commission's entire file for each application on tonight's docket, and the qualifications of each of these staff witnesses. And finally, I'd ask you to administer the oath to those witnesses.
Y'all swear to tell the truth? Thank you very much. Okay, we're getting ready to go into our public hearings. Can that screen come back up, Jenny, for the people in the audience tonight? Okay. For you all that are here, this is how the process works. The staff makes a presentation on the items that are presented. The applicant, the people that are applying for this, they have 15 minutes to make their presentation, and then the opposition, we ask for if there's questions or opposition to this by anybody in the audience. Then if any individual, a public person wants to make a comment, they have 3 minutes, and then the applicant has 3 minutes for a closing argument. So just for information only. Our first item tonight is 2025-01 DP Brookwood Farms 2024 LLC, care of Rodney Rogers, has filed an application to amend the general development plan conditions for 83.63 acres located at 1050 Brookwood Drive. The area is subject to this application is zone PUD, Plan Unit Development. And Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting for the property on Brookwood Drive on November 5th of last year. Here's their concept. Current zoning of the property, here's an aerial footage of the entire property. Current zoning is planned unit development, PUD. Current land use is agriculture. And then the future land use designation is low-density residential. And then here are some photos of the property as it is today. And then we will pop back to the concept. And again, to summarize, they are proposing to amend the development plan for 83.63 acres. The purpose of the application is to revise the allowable square footage for structures and alter the permitted building materials. And those changes can be shown, or those changes are shown in the DPCs on page 3 of your staff report for reference. So looking down to the recommendation, the proposal complies with a majority of the criteria assessed in the review process, remains consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, and is generally compatible with the surrounding area. And with that, staff's recommendation is approval, pending public hearing testimony and discussion tonight. And that's all that I have for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Commissioners, any questions for staff? All right, hearing none. Is the applicant or the representative here, anything they would like to add?
Good evening, Chair Warren. Chris Davenport, 921 College Street. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Chris.
Not much I want to add to this. If the property looks familiar to you, this is the new school that's being built off the Natcher right here. If I can get that little, right in there. This was rezoned in 2022. Went to PUD at that time. The only other thing I really want to stress here is my client, Mr. Rogers is present, is not seeking to increase any density here. So there's no request to increase the number of units. It's just to modify two of the restrictions regarding square footage and then the materials. We're trying to basically answer the market. That's what he's trying to do. So I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
So we're going from a minimum 1,400 to 1,100?
That's correct, for both the attached and detached single-family homes.
Okay.
So Chris, if I read this correctly, we've gone from exterior facades to be masonry to essentially 100% vinyl.
In the current conditions, only the front facade has to be masonry. So vinyl is allowed on the other three facades.
Okay.
And so we're asking to change the front facade minimums, and then we're asking, similar to the request I had on the Hargett property a few months ago, some of these homes, it's intended to be built on slab, and if they are, they want to be able to use the block foundations no more than 6 inches above grade with a stucco finish.
Got it. And I'm not opposed to that. So this property probably isn't flat enough to do all slab. What happens if they don't? I don't see a provision if they've got to go back to a crawl space.
Then they can't have if they can't have a block foundation that's 6 inches or less above grade, it'll have to be a brick
So they got to go
foundation.
back to brick.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, but now, if I understand correctly, all front facades would be permitted as 100% vinyl?
They all could be, yes. That restriction would be amended. And again, you know, a lot of times we get these applications, and the first thing, if someone is complaining about a 1,100 square foot home, they say, well, you just want to put as many homes in there as you can. That's not the request here. These lot sizes are not changing. The lot numbers are not changing. This is not a desire to get more homes out of the development and increase the density. It is, the desire here is, and I don't want to belabor the point, but it's to hit some of the mandates in that 2023 housing study that we've talked about recently.
So primarily focused on affordability.
Absolutely. And I would say, two questions I would have if I were you is why now and why here? I think I've answered the why now. That housing study tells you the why now. The why here in your staff report, the median home sizes in the area is 1,200 already, number one. Number two, over 70% of the homes in the area already have block foundations, and 40% at least have vinyl siding. So this area, I don't think we're changing the norms by making these requests.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davenport.
Thank you.
Commissioners, hang on just a minute, Chris. Any other questions for the applicant's attorney?
Chris, are the other homes in the area around the same square footage?
Yeah, the staff report says the median home size in the area is 1,200 square feet.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you.
And of course, you all know, when we commit to 1,100 minimum, you shouldn't expect every home to be 11. I mean, that's the minimum, and I doubt there's a housing plan out there that's exactly 1,100 square feet. There's probably one. I'm not saying there's not one, but typically, we know that that's just the minimum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
In DPC 4,
Yes.
did you say that if the homes are not on slab, that they would have brick or stone foundation?
If they have to have more than 6 inches above grade.
Okay, that's not how this reads.
All right, let me look at that real
It may
quick.
need- If that's the intent.
I thought my
I think that-
dyslexia was kicking in or something.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I've been wrong before, and my wife will tell me I'll be wrong again. I'm going to assure you that. Let me get to the right page. It's in DPC 4, Rachel?
Yes, on page 3 of the staff report.
Well, it says it may include plain face block, but no more than 6 inches shall be above grade. I think I'm reading that right.
You are, but, so here's the issue. What if it is, what if the grade exposes more than 6 inches? That's the part that I don't see. or
Then it
am I
cannot
miss-
be plain face block.
All right, so, and do we specify that it is a brick veneer or a stone veneer here?
No.
No.
Well, I mean,
So would it be split face block potentially?
I don't think so. Let me talk to Rodney. I think I can, if I may,
There you
just
go.
real quick, I think I can make that read better than it does.
And I get that if it's flat enough, they're gonna do a slab, but this is probably not flat enough. He's gonna have some crawl spaces in
Yeah.
there.
The assumption I'm working off, Commissioner Graham, is you gave me an edification last time about this, and you basically told me, and you would know, I wouldn't know, that 6 inches above grade's not doable on a crawl space.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Can't
So
do
let me talk to Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's add a sentence to that, if we might. Any foundation extending more than 6 inches above grade shall be brick.
Okay.
That will clarify that confusion.
Let's make it brick veneer just for clarity.
Brick veneer, yeah. What's that? Yes. Hey, Mr. Rogers, can you come up, please?
Rodney? Your name and address, please, sir?
Rodney Rogers, 191 Windmere Court, and I will tell the truth.
Thank you, sir. You heard the development plan conditions as changed. Do you agree to those?
Yes, sir. And Tim, just to further clarify, our intent is, and I know there's a lot of relief as far as elevation goes, but we've got a grading plan, which is required now by the Warren County Public Works to have a finished floor established on every lot before it's approved.
Oh, I see. You're gonna do most of your grading before you start
Oh,
construction
yeah,
on something.
yeah.
Okay.
And every one of these, every lot on there will be, it'll have a specific grade, it'll be graded to a specific elevation. And our intention is to put every one of them on a slab. That's
That's
just,
fine. Yeah, if you can, I just assumed that you wouldn't do that much grading and you'd go back to it, but if you do, no issue. You'll
Yeah.
just stamp it AFF above finished floor
Yes,
on.
sir.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rodney.
thank you.
And he agreed to it. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience tonight has a question or opposition to this request? All right, hearing none, commissioners would call for a motion, please.
I make the motion to,
Oh, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Your name and address, please?
My name's Alice Howard, 775 Sweeney Lane in Bowling Green. I swear to tell the truth.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Howard.
I own 257 acres that's between Brookwood and Sweeney Lane. I own the largest amount of land that's next to this. And I have 2 reservations and 1 question. My largest reservation, if they're going to be doing grading, I own everything here that is listed in my parents' name on this diagram. It says Philip and Peggy Brownfield. My father is deceased. All that land, public record, is now in my name. My mother is disabled, and she's bedbound. But if they're going to be doing grading, this is all farmland, family farm. Are you all going to be making accommodations so that I won't have any drain back or any?
Yeah. Ask your second question, and we'll call the applicant.
Okay,
back up.
and my second question is where that is subdivided up there. My mother had a private survey done, and it was never filed that was subdivided. It was all deeded in one deed. So how did this get public record? That is listed as being subdivided.
Could we give her the cursor so we could point to what she's referring to?
The land that's listed as Peggy Brownfield and Philip Brownfield, the land that I own, that's
Oh, I see what you're saying.
on that large land there, and that looks like it's subdivided into 3 lots.
We may have to have staff to comment on that.
Yeah, I would like to know how that was done, because that was done privately. It was never filed. How did that get on a public record up here?
Ma'am, I don't know if that would be for us to discuss, and this has already been approved. The house is, I mean, we're really just today talking about the square footage
Okay.
and changing a little of the exterior.
Last time I was here, when
Right.
this was all being discussed, it was being discussed as, because I was objecting and wanting a fence put up, because I own a fence, because this was farm, and I said that I could electrify it at any time, because we've had a farm here. And I was told, well, because I said, we could turn the fence back on at any time. And I was told, that, I said, I was going to be getting the farm, and my daughter would inherit it if anything happened to me. And I was told, well, we'll see about that. And, because I said, we're never going to sell the farm, because I was wondering why these roads were going into our land, dead-ending and into our land, because I'm like,
Well, the stub streets or something that.
right.
Right.
But it makes it look like, like,
Well, that's part of our zoning requirements, that if you all
Right.
ever, if you ever sold that land, that there would be a connection.
Right,
And
but-
not saying that you would.
yeah, and it's never going to be for sale.
Okay, that's fine.
Right.
And staff answer the question about the fencing, and then we'll call Mr. Davenport to talk about the grading.
Right. And then I have concerns with our farmland and electric fence being right there at people's backyards. And electric fence, and we have sinkholes and things, and, that's a danger,
Okay.
and
All right.
I'm here first.
Okay, all right. Rachel, what about the fencing? Maybe if you could answer that.
Well, if she wants to put up an electric fence, that's
My
on
electric
her
fence,
property, that's fine.
my
It's already
electric
there.
fence is already there.
That's-
Okay,
It's
that is
there,
on
it's
your
fine,
property. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Right.
But I guess to answer the question about the land division, this says that it was recorded in plat book 40, page,
But it's not. That's the thing. It's not. It's not in a deed. It's not recorded anywhere,
this says that it is recorded.
but it's incorrect. You can go to the county courthouse. It's not.
So you're saying it's not recorded in plat book 40?
No, it is not.
Well, that's just what the surveyor provided when they did their boundary survey. So that's.
It's
they-
inc-
in their
it's
research,
incorrect.
That's what they.
It's
listed on the
incorrect. I've already been at the courthouse. He's given information he had no right to.
Okay. All right. Mr. Davenport, would you talk about the mitigation of land and how it would affect Mrs. Howard's property?
So Mr. Rogers gave you a little insight about the grading permit that will have to be acquired on the property before dirt is moved. In addition to that, as this body's aware, there is extensive groundwater regulations that will also get planned, engineered, and reviewed at at least the local and the state levels. So,
And so they'll have to do silt fences, all of those things
Absolutely.
to mitigate runoff,
To keep-
all of the things that they would normally have to do for.
keep
for
any
subdivision.
erosion from occurring on the neighboring properties.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Thank you,
y'all.
Chris. All right, is there anyone else, thank you, Ms. Howard, appreciate you being here tonight. Is there anyone else in the audience tonight has a question to this request? All right, hearing none, Commissioners, call for a motion, please.
I make the motion to approve the proposed general development plan amendment docket number 2025-1 DP based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed general development plan amendment is consistent with adopted Focus 2030 plan, Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objective and action items in the staff report. Further, I also find that there have been major changes in the economic, physical, and social nature within the area of the property in question, and I requested the findings of fact and recommendation include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, Planning Commission final action. Thank you, Ms. Howard, for being here tonight. Our next item is 2025-01 ZBG CSR BG Investments LLC, care of Chris Robertson, has filed an application to rezone 2.4 acres located on a portion of the property at 2041 Russellville Road, fronting 8-away from Highway Business and RM Multifamily Residential to RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential with the General Development Plan. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting of February last year for the property that you highlighted. Here is an aerial view for reference. Current zoning is RM4 in HB. Their current land use is vacant. The future land use is mixed-use commercial. And we do have a couple of photos for your viewing pleasure here. And then here's the concept that the applicant has supplied. And again, the applicant is proposing to rezone from RM4 in HB to RM3 in order to construct a maximum of 40 multifamily residential units on the property. Looking down at the bottom of the page, staff has noted considerations relating to parking, density, and open space. And if we look over on page 2, right underneath the site characteristics review heading, as you can see, parking is shown on the supplied site plan. During the pre-comprehensive development review meeting, staff noted a surplus of parking by about 20 spaces. The amount of parking shown on the preliminary development plan remains unchanged for that. We wanted to note the excess in parking. Looking over at the surrounding density, within 1,000 feet of the property, densities range from 0 to 18.28 dwelling units per acre with an average density of 5.73. The density of the former mobile home park was 8.6 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density for this development is 16.47, which is more than 1.5 times the recommended density. Staff suggested that the applicant incorporate a maximum density of no more than 13.83, which is the density for a majority of the parcels on Amy Avenue. The applicant indicated to staff that they wish to proceed with the current density as proposed. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed density is appropriate in this location and if it is compatible with the surrounding area. And looking down toward the bottom of the page to open space, the minimum amount of open space required, this should be the RM3 zone, is 20%, though the applicant has committed to the minimum of 20% open space, so they have committed to the minimum, and that can be found in DPC number 2. During the pre-CDR meeting, staff noted a surplus of parking by 20 spaces.
and further suggested the applicant identify any residential amenities that were planned for the proposed development, as there are no sidewalks or recreational facilities in the area for the potential residents. This was noted to the applicant for a second time during the review of this application. The applicant has not reduced the number of parking provided on the development plan and has not identified any formal open space areas or amenities. Looking back at page 1, staff recommendation is approval, or the proposal complies with majority of the criteria assessed in the review process and is generally compatible with the surrounding area. Therefore, the staff recommendation is approval pending any public hearing, public testimony and discussion of any of the items we've reviewed. That's all we have for staff report. Can answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Okay, so Amy, I'm going to show my ignorance here.
Okay.
They have more parking than they need.
Correct. I think I counted up 107 spaces on the site plan. This particular application is located within the WKU 1 mile buffer zone, so they have an increased parking requirement. They're proposing 1 and 2 bedroom units. 1 bedroom requires 1.5 parking spaces. 2 bedrooms requires 2.5. Therefore, I think they need a minimum of about 80, and so they're just overparked.
So they don't have enough parking provided, or they?
No, they're overparked. They have a surplus.
They have a surplus. So here's my ignorance. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
They have ample, they've met the minimum requirement provided, but going back to the open space, they've met the minimum required open space.
So if I understood correctly during your presentation, you said you mentioned something to them twice, but they did not give you a response.
Well, I think they wanted to keep the parking that has been identified on the site plan.
So you were just making them aware that they had more parking than they were
Correct.
required to have. All right, very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Graham, we were making them aware of the surplus because we also mentioned that there are no sidewalks or amenities in the area. So we had suggested that maybe you could remove the extra parking and potentially provide some amenities or
Make a
open space
substitution.
areas for the residents.
I see.
That's why we had a concern there with having extra.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Commissioners, any other questions for staff? Thank you, Amy. Is the applicant here, or the representative, Mr. Davenport?
Thank you, Chair. I still swear to tell the truth. I was going to brag about having too much parking, but then Jace Caldwell, the engineer on the project, just noted that the unit descriptions are wrong. These are 2 bedrooms. They're planning all these to be 2 bedrooms, hence why he had that many parking spots. So I apologize to staff that we didn't iron that out, but that's why he has that much parking there.
Okay,
So, but again, I was going to kind of brag that I kind of think more parking is good, but we'll at least have the minimum. As for the open space, I believe the minimum here is 15%, and we've obligated to 20, isn't that right? The minimum is 20, okay, that's what the condition says. I understand that you all have become accustomed to seeing a lot of amenities with the multifamily housing. From my viewpoint, this is basically an infill project. It's in an urban area. The size of the lot doesn't really afford itself to those types of amenities that we see on other projects. So my pitch to you would be this is a very good use of a centrally urban area. It is currently zoned RM4 and HB, so I would also make the point that going to RM3 is actually a down zoning in intensity. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Davenport?
So Chris, I want to make sure I understand. I think staff was noting originally noting that you did have extra space, and that's why they were asking for something in regard to amenities. But I think what you're telling us today is there isn't any extra space available because it's an infill and you don't have any extra parking.
At least not as much as I think staff had thought.
Got it.
With the 2 bedrooms, because again, the parking is derivative of the number of bedrooms.
So do the two bedrooms, is that something that needs to change in any of the text here, or that's of no consequence?
No, there's nothing specific to the number of bedrooms, other than just what's listed on the exhibit. But ultimately, if this moves forward, they would have to apply for a site development plan, and at that time, we would verify the number of bedrooms in each unit and ensure that the minimum parking is provided.
Very good. Okay, that's all I have.
Rachel, I have a question. So the two-bedroom doesn't impact the density?
No, the number of bedrooms does not impact the density. The density is calculated only based on the number of units in each building.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I will comment on that if I might, Mr. Starks. You remind me of a point I was going to make. We're over the 1.5 average, and that's what staff has noted. I would note, however, that there is a development in the area that's more dense than this at 18. The staff report notes that. So we had a conversation a couple weeks ago about averages, and we're still not the most dense with what we're requesting, and it's a point I did want to stress to the commission.
But Rachel, at an RM4, what could the density be? 20? 24?
Well, if you look at the zoning map in your packet, there's a very small sliver that's currently zoned RM4.
Okay.
So not the whole property is not currently zoned RM4 now?
It's not. If you go to page 12 of your packet,
Most of it's HB.
it doesn't stick out very well
okay.
because the red outline of what's being rezoned or proposed to be rezoned, but there's a very small strip of that darker red RM4 color, and that's what's currently RM4.
Okay.
So the majority is currently HB.
One thing staff mentioned is maybe, because Mr. Robertson, my clients, they own this entire tract, but the development plan and the plans for this rear portion that's going to remain HB are very much in stone at this stage. So I didn't have the ability to add a little bit of acreage just to keep the unit count where it is, but get the density down. I do want the commission to understand that line is basically set in stone for him, where this development will end and where the commercial in the back will begin.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, any other questions for Mr. Davenport? I'm sorry, Chris, before you sit down. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question or opposition to this request? All right, thank you. Commissioners would call for a motion, please.
I make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with a condition upon a general development plan, docket number 2025-1ZBG, based upon a testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with objective and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Gage?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Drain?
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren?
Yes, sir. The motion is approved, and it's planning commission final action in 21 days unless a request is made for the legislative body to hear the item. Our next item tonight is 2025-01 Flume Covington Farms Development LLC, care of Johnston Boyd, has filed an application for a future land use map amendment on a property containing approximately 9/10 of an acre located on Old Barren River Road, approximately 292 feet southeast of Veterans Memorial Boulevard, from moderate density residential to mixed use commercial. Amy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting last November for the property that you mentioned. Here is an aerial view for your reference. The current zoning is agriculture in RM3. The current land use is vacant. The future land use is moderate density residential. And again, the applicant is proposing to amend the flume from moderate density residential to mixed use commercial. If the Flume Amendment is successful, the applicant would later like to file an application to rezone the same area from Ag and RM3 to RM3 in order to develop the site with a multifamily housing development consisting of 16 dwelling units. We have some photos for your review. And then I'll leave the site plan up for that. Looking at the bottom of the page, staff has noted considerations regarding the proposed density. If we look over at page 4 and review that category, densities within 1,000 feet of the development are 0 to 23 dwelling units per acre, with the average density being 3.97. The recommended density per HN-2.1 of the comprehensive plan is 5.96 dwelling units per acre. Although there are a few multifamily developments in the immediate vicinity with higher densities, and we have listed a few there for your reference. The proposed density for the subject area to the Flume Amendment is 17.18 dwelling units per acre, and the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed density is compatible with the area. Looking back at page 1, staff found the proposed Flume Amendment to be generally in agreement with LU 114 of the comprehensive plan and is generally compatible with the surrounding area. Therefore, staff recommendation is approval, pending public hearing, testimony, and discussion. That's all we have for staff report. Answer any questions.
Thank you, Amy. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Do you have a map of these other properties you have under the surrounding density?
No, ma'am, I don't believe we have a density map, but we can go back to the existing area, and we might be able to.
The land use.
Sure.
Yeah.
You might be able to see toward the bottom or the right side of the page here. Here's a larger multifamily development in this area, and then there's a large one in this area here.
So which ones would that be under these listing?
Well, I've gone too far.
The Angora Court Apartments are the larger property to the, I guess, yes, right there.
Right here.
And
Where's the Old Barren River Road?
if we go starting with 1020 Old Barren River Road, I believe that should be the property on the east. On the right.
Right there.
And then the 1125 and 1147 would be on the south side of Old Barren River Road, and it's the pocket there of, it's the smaller lots that are right in there that have those higher densities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sissel. Commissioners, any other questions for staff?
Is there a mistake on page 5, proposed open space, or am I not reading that correctly?
Plus the proposed, so in the RM3 zone, just as the previous application, the open space would be 20%, but they're proposing a minimum of 25, so they're exceeding that minimum requirement of 20.
It says 80.
Oh, that is a typo. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, 20%. Oh, so they're not proposing a minimum. Okay.
Ms. Ritchie's answer your question? All right, thank you so much. Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you so much, Amy. Is the applicant here or the representative, anything you would like to add?
Chris Davenport on behalf of Covington Farms Development. This is just a flume, this is the flume, so we'll have to come back to rezone this and bind these development conditions. That being said, I think the development conditions give you a really good idea of what the owner wants to do here, how that fits in with the area, given those other densities within 1,000 foot that that y'all have talked about. I will add that the requested flume being mixed-use commercial is the same as the adjoining property. So I think these properties right here have that same flume designation, that large tract. So I think it makes sense in the area, given both of those reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question or a opposition to this request? All right, hearing none, Matthew, call for it's a full board.
So you need a
I
motion.
make the motion to approve.
Oh, excuse me.
Can I go? I make the motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment, docket number 2025-01 Flume. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed Flume amendment has met the criteria to amend the Flume as outlined in LU-1.1.4 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Now, Matthew.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sissel,
Yes.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. The motion is approved, and Planning Commission final action. So thank you all very much. Our next item tonight is 2025-03 Flume STNL Development LLC, care of Christopher Canary, the applicant, and Suits Me 3 LLC, care of David Carter, have filed an application for a future land use map amendment for 29.99 acres located at 6698 Nashville Road for mixed-use residential and moderate-density residential to commercial and high-density residential. Ms. Hurd?
Thank you, Chair Warren. We had a pre-application meeting back in November for the property you just referenced, located at 6698 Nashville Road. It's also at the intersection of Nashville Road and Dillard Road, just to get your bearings there. And as you mentioned, the applicants have requested to amend the future land use map from mixed-use residential and moderate-density residential to commercial and high-density residential. And I'll actually flip to the future land use map really quick and show you the current future land use map for reference. Jumping back, you can see that the current zoning is agriculture, and the current land use is also agriculture. I'm going to touch on the future land use map amendment criteria that starts on page 3 of your staff report. LU 1.1.4 of the comprehensive plan outlines the procedures to amend the future land use map, and the Planning Commission's approval of a future land use map amendment should be based on at least one of the following criteria. The applicant checked 2 of the 3 criteria on their application. So looking at criteria 1, when we analyze this, staff does not believe the application meets criteria 1 and instead suggested that the applicants focus on addressing criteria 3. This remained unchanged in the amended Flume Amendment application that was supplied to staff. The applicant has stated that the proposed development will provide much-needed retail and commercial opportunities in an area that has experienced significant residential growth. The proposed development is not, however, a major public facility or amenity for use by those in the general vicinity, and staff has also noted that there are existing retail and commercial uses that serve the area, including commercial properties located across Nashville Road. These developments are of lesser intensity and smaller in bulk and scale than the proposed development, and the applicant has not demonstrated how the commercial portion of the development cannot be accommodated in a location consistent with the current future land use map. Although not currently zoned, there exist various undeveloped parcels of at least 15 acres in size in the city of Bowling Green that are designated as commercial in the future land use map that could accommodate the commercial portion of the proposed development. And looking at the high-density residential portion of the request, Warren County as a whole currently includes roughly 200 acres of undeveloped RM4 zone property with a minimum size of 10 acres per tract. So we just wanted to point that out for your consideration. Then looking at the criteria 3 analysis, which looks at compatibility with the surrounding development. After the preliminary review, staff has determined that the proposed development is generally compatible with the surrounding area. Considerations are noted, however, regarding signage and hours of operation for the commercial portion of the development, as well as the building height, building orientation, tree preservation, and open space for the multifamily residential portion of the development. And considerations are also noted regarding the bulk and scale of the proposed buildings within the development as a whole. The applicants have also provided some information as to how the proposed amendment will not result in development that exceeds the capacity of existing infrastructure, but did not address stormwater as a part of their application. Next, you should have an amended sheet at your seat that looks like this. This is meant to replace the traffic impact study of the staff report. We received correspondence from Warren County Public Works Director Josh Moore this afternoon requesting these changes be made to the requirements, and so those are just detailed in the highlighted section of the new page that I handed out. We did meet with Warren County Public Works staff and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet staff, along with our staff and the applicants back in December. And during this meeting, it was determined by the transportation review agencies that they were not going to require a traffic impact study, but in lieu of that, that the applicants needed to agree to the requirements that are in the bulleted list on the amended sheet that you received as amended. And the applicants did address a majority of these requirements in their preliminary development plan conditions, and they generally comply with section 314 of the zoning ordinance. The applicants have not addressed removal of the existing entrances on Nashville Road, a prohibition of left turns out of the development onto Nashville Road, or the required submission of AM and PM peak counts. So if the Flume Amendment is approved tonight and this were to move forward, these items would need to be addressed in the rezoning stage of the development process. Jumping back to page 1, I'll just look at our recommendation at the bottom. I had noted those items for consideration earlier in the Criteria 3 review for the Flume Amendment. So I'm going to circle back and go into detail on those one at a time. So the first looks at hours of operation for the commercial portion of the development, and that's highlighted on page 7 of your staff report under surrounding land uses. Given the proximity of existing and planned residential uses, staff suggested that the applicants consider limiting hours of operation to something that is more compatible. Currently, you'll see in their preliminary development plan conditions that their proposed hours of operation number 6 are from 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. If unlimited hours of operation are desired for a convenience store, the hours of operation other than a convenience store are proposed to be 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. So if unlimited hours of operation are desired for a convenience store, staff further suggested that the applicants consider limiting the location of such use and/or allowing unlimited hours of operation for fuel sales only. And the applicants did not amend their hours of operation as suggested. The next point I would like to highlight relates to signage, and that's listed on page 8 of your staff report. The proposed HB zone, if this were to move forward and get to the zone change stage, does permit signage up to 30 feet in height with a maximum sign face area of 150 square feet. The existing freestanding signage in this section of Nashville Road is smaller in size and shorter in height than what is permitted in the proposed HB zone. The freestanding sign for the Dollar General property across Nashville Road is 20 feet in height with a sign face area of 50 square feet. Additionally, the property zone general business to the northeast, if I go back to the zoning map, so that'd be this parcel right here, limits freestanding signage to a maximum of 20 feet in height and 50 square feet in size. The applicants addressed the style of signage and agreed to limit it to monument style, but did not limit the total height or sign face area for freestanding signage within the development. Next, touching on tree preservation, we've just noted that is going to be under the natural features section on page 7, that the applicant addressed tree preservation in the preliminary development plan conditions for the multifamily portion of the development. And if a subsequent rezoning application is filed, staff suggested amending this development plan condition to include a more measurable do not disturb buffer. Next, looking at building height, that'll be under the surrounding architectural features section at the bottom of page 7. Staff has noted that the nearby residential structures range from 1 to 2 stories in height And the applicants are proposing a maximum building height of 3 stories for the multifamily portion of the development. Also looking at bulk and scale of the proposed buildings in this same section. Commercial parcels in the immediate vicinity contain buildings of 10,000 square feet or less in size, and multifamily structures are limited to no more than 8 units per building, not 24 units as proposed. And it's not specifically stated here, but in highway business, there's no maximum building size like there is in general business.
Could you say that again, please?
Sure. In general business, the maximum building size is 10,000 square feet, and in the proposed HB zone, there's not a maximum building size. Next, I'm going to touch on building orientation. That's going to be under building orientation on page 8. And we have noted that the majority of structures in the vicinity have front facades oriented to face Nashville Road or Dillard Road. And the applicants addressed building orientation and/or a screening requirement for the commercial portion of the development, but did not address building orientation for the multifamily portion of the development. Then looking at open space, that's also going to be on page 8. The maximum lot coverage in the proposed RM4 zone is 85%, meaning a minimum of 15% would remain as open space. The applicant's committed to providing residential amenities for residents of the multifamily portion of the development, but did not agree to an increased amount of open space beyond the minimum. And then I believe the last thing to point out in this section relates to prime farmland, and that's on page 7. And we've noted that about 2/3 of the property is classified as prime farmland. So those are our items for your consideration. But pending discussion of those items, our recommendation is for approval, and also pending any public hearing testimony. Be happy to answer any questions.
So, Rachel, I'm just asking a broad question. Usually, the people will address the issues the staff brought up, and they have not addressed many of these. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. They haven't addressed the items I just highlighted. Some of them are not able to be overcome. If the property's developed, we're losing prime farmland. So
Right,
that's
but-
just noted for your consideration.
No,
That's
I
not
understand,
something they
but-
can
but
change. But there are items that could warrant more discussion this
But
evening.
some of these items to address, you really wouldn't do until the next phase, correct?
Well, part of it's just whether or not you all will find this style and type of development to be compatible. So some of those things like the bulk and scale of the proposed structures and the building height, the number of units in multifamily. Right now, they could request general business and RM3 in the current future land use map designations without having to amend the future land use map. So part of the discussion this evening should revolve around some of those compatibility items, because ultimately that's what would then be permitted under the zoning.
So Rachel, in follow-up to what Commissioner Graham mentioned, at this very point, they have not addressed those items that you have identified as.
Correct. On the bottom of page 1, that last bullet point there,
Okay.
those are the things we wanted to point out for your consideration.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then one last question, if I may, Rachel. So kind of going back to the decision, should we consider this flume change, you mentioned that there were properties available or spaces available currently. Tell me how that plays into our decision-making process.
So let me jump back to page 3. And you'll see there that we have a reference to LU 1.1.4, which is an action item contained within our comprehensive plan.
And you said either 1 or 3 they need to meet, correct?
So they have to meet at least one of the 3 review criteria. And when they applied for this future land use map amendment, they submitted an application, which you'll see on page 20 of your staff report. They have selected 2 of the 3 criteria.
Right.
The first one being that this is that the applicant is demonstrating an overriding public benefit of the proposed development. This may include the provision of a major public facility or amenity, the provision of a major source of employment, or an economic development asset that cannot, this is the key, that cannot be accommodated in a location consistent with the current future land use map.
Okay. And so it is staff's conclusion that they do not meet that, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Which is why we suggested they focus on criteria 3.
All right.
But then ultimately, when they submitted their revisions to us, they still included that as part of their argument.
Okay, so, and this is just for me to understand how to consider this. If they don't meet it, we have to go to number 3 and meet all of those, correct?
If they don't meet it, then you all would have to find that they at least comply with one of the review criteria, which would only leave you to review criteria 3.
3 is the only one left, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, all right, very good. And so I'm a little confused here. The applicant is aware that they didn't meet these and that these things are left unaddressed?
You may ask them here in a minute, but we did supply, you can see our comments at the back of the staff report. There's a copy of the draft staff report, page 36, with our comments running through page 46. So
Yeah.
we made our suggestions. They had a week or so to submit the revisions, and ultimately what we received is what is in your packet this evening.
Okay, so last question. How can we get a staff recommendation for approval if they clearly haven't met them?
Well, that's why it's pending discussion of those items.
Okay.
So if at the end of the evening,
They do meet them, then...
they do meet them,
I see.
then that's where the recommendation came from. I guess because we felt like some of those things were not, those were things that maybe were just overlooked in the review, that they might be prepared to address. But then at the end of the night, if none of them are addressed and you all aren't comfortable approving the application, you don't have to go with our recommendation.
Very good. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rachel. Wait, before you sit down, Rachel, Commissioners, any other questions before we call the applicant up? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Davenport?
Good evening again. I have with me Ms. Michael Ann Murphy with STNL Development. She's sitting in the corner. Mr. Shirley, the engineer on the project, is sitting next to her. Let me first of all say I'm very honored to be bringing this application with what I hope will be a significant development for this part of the county. Now, that being said, let me first address, and I don't want to be too adversarial here, but I sometimes take issue with the phrasing that we did not address something, okay? We did not agree to every condition in our application that the staff noted, okay? For instance, they addressed hours of operation. We have addressed hours of operation. There is a condition for that. It is not, the staff had suggested maybe we up those a little bit, but like all the conditions I'm going to talk about tonight, this is a phase. This project is in a certain phase. I can't even tell you tonight, legally, confidentially, without ruined confidence, who the anchor tenant of this would be. That's the stage that we're in, okay? But there is an anchor tenant that's involved in this. There will also be out parcel tenants that become involved in this. And so each one of those actors have a say in this at a certain stage. So when we talk about things like hours of operation, what I don't want to do with this body is come before this body at a flume hearing and offer conditions that I intend to walk back at the zoning hearing. That is not the way I want to conduct business, okay? I would much rather offer, for talking purposes today, conditions that I know will only go one way between now and the zoning hearing. Without making any promises about how things are going to get more strict, I don't want to bait and switch anybody, I guess is the phrase I'm trying to use here, okay? So when discussing with my clients, we're able to, on a lot of points at this stage, do exactly what the staff recommended. On others, not quite, but that doesn't mean they're not addressed, okay? We have in here, for instance, conditions about hours of operations. We have conditions about signage. We have not yet agreed to a lower sign. Fair, that's a fair statement, but I don't think that means we haven't addressed signage. I don't think Ms. Hurt is trying to relay to you all that we've ignored her on any of these topics, because they are discussed and they are in the conditions. They may not be the final stage yet that the staff wants on all of them. But I think at this point, the significance of the flume is that you have a fair enough idea that if the flume is modified, what to expect when I come back at a zoning hearing.
So I think I better understand what's happening here, Chris. It sounds like your position is this. I'm applying for a flume change, and I can't make all the commitments for a zone change at this time. And so now this question comes for staff. Are we supposed to have all of that in place at a flume change?
You don't have to have it all in place during the future land use map amendment process. But ultimately, you all, decision makers, have to determine if they have met the majority of the review criteria,
That's correct.
which I think that's, again, well, going back on our recommendation, they didn't address several items, but you'll note that your staff report is nearly 50 pages long, and there's quite a bit of things that we reviewed. So if we went through and tallied up things that were in compliance versus out of compliance, the majority would be in compliance. But
Okay.
there's still a good discretion where you can say, I personally feel strongly about X, Y, or Z topic or compatibility item. And so you can place a higher amount of weight on some of these items, whereas one of the other commissioners may not. So it's still very subjective, and you all are able to make varying decisions in this process. But we also didn't feel like it would be fair if we didn't point out
Address them.
these items that are in that last bullet point on page 1.
It's probably the struggle you get when you do a flume and you don't do the zone change on the same evening.
And we've gone back and forth on that.
Yeah, I understand. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand what you're doing, but that is the struggle a little bit that we have to get past.
And again, we've had this discussion before. Whatever's in this set doesn't bind them right now.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to overstress this, but I don't want to understress it. I want to be fair to you all. I don't want to come in here with some rosy DPCs and come back here 2 months later with something different. Because frankly, you all would not appreciate that, and you would see through that very quickly. You know, to the one point, the staff did encourage me to drop the argument under 1. Okay, they said, we don't think you meet that. I read that differently. Okay, I'll be honest with you. The paren in number 1 is things you may include, but the overarching question in the criteria number 1 is a demonstrated overriding public benefit of the proposed development. That's the overall question. And I think to your point, Commissioner Graham, the staff has noted there are other areas in the county that you don't need to change the flume to put this type of development in. I'm not going to argue against that, but I will say you won't find it in this corridor. And to me, the benefit is this area of the county and not needing to drive 7 miles from Buchanan Park to get to certain amenities. And all those people that live in between having to drive 7 miles to get to those amenities. So that's why I felt like I could maybe chew gum and walk at the same time on this one. I do think there's a public benefit. Staff doesn't agree, but at least staff is willing to say under the 3rd criteria that they are recommending approval. And that's the first thing I guess I need to accentuate, and it probably ought to be the last thing I accentuate. Now, with regard to the development more generally, or I guess a few things I want to stress, the multifamily, even with the development conditions you see before you, is of the utmost high end. This would be a gated multifamily development with amenities like pool, recreational courts, and those types of things. Of course, the jewel of the development is the commercial, with the anchor tenant and the opportunities that brings. So
Chris, do I understand correctly, and this part of this is for staff, I think I now understand a little more. The problem is we don't know what this thing is, so the only risk we run at this point is approving the flume, but you still got to come back and make your case for all of these things that we just talked about.
That's correct.
Am I accurate about
yeah.
that?
All I can tell you about the anchor tenant is it's a Fortune 500 company. that provides the things you need on a daily basis.
But Chris, it could be, it's a potential. It's not
That's
set in
correct.
stone. Is that
That's
correct?
The only reason I can't tell you more is the lease isn't inked yet, but it's
Well,
underway.
that's fine, but just for information only, we don't have that. And we don't-
Correct.
Okay.
I wish I could say more.
Well,
Chairman.
that's okay, but I'm saying it's what if.
Yep.
Okay.
But just because we changed the flume, still have to come back for approval, for whatever. will go
That is
there.
correct,
Yeah.
but-
And I know I'm sounding very altruistic by saying, I don't want to sell y'all a bill of goods and come back here with something different. But that's also in the interest of my client,
I understand.
because it wouldn't fly very well for them if I did that.
So Chris, is it safe to say that you need this flume amendment in order to be able to move forward with the inking of this contract?
Well, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The
I'm
players here know exactly what this ordinance reads in this community.
I see. Okay, I understand now. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Davenport? I think what we have understood tonight in Mr. Davenport's clarification and your all's questions, that this is a flume amendment. It is not a final zoning, however it ends up. This is just a potential future land use map for this piece of property. Is that everybody in clarity on that? So, thank you, Mr. Davenport.
Thank you, Chairman Warren.
Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question or an opposition to this request? Yes, sir. If you would come to the microphone, please. If you would state your name and address, please, sir.
Ricky Woodcock, 394 Dillard Road. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Woodcock.
On the map, I've got two questions for y'all. The light blue on the map on the south side of Dillard Road, is that a flood zone?
Yes, sir.
That is a flood zone. My property's at 394. It's the long, slender one. I don't know if I can point it out here or not with my finger.
Yeah, you can move on the keypad or on the mouse pad, you
Okay.
should be able to put the handprint where you live.
This is my property right along here. 6.5 acres. Dillard Road has been known to flood a lot. My biggest question is, where's all the water going from this development?
Okay.
I'm being flooded now from the orchard, which I talked to y'all before about this, and nothing has ever been done about it. And my second thing, my backyard is going to have three-story apartment buildings in it. Is there any plan to have a fence put between my property and their property?
So that would be done, and that would be done at the next hearing if this flume passed. That wouldn't be done tonight.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
the confusing part of this. Drainage,
All of that
all
would
of
be
that
addressed.
stuff
All that would be
comes at the
addressed
next
at the
phase.
next
So
meeting.
tonight is just the future land use map.
But the answer is yes. From a drainage, it would all be addressed, and there would not be a building permit permitted until the draining is taken care of and everything was satisfied with the drainage, where the water would go.
Well, see, I've been,
Sorry.
And they'll have the civil engineers here for all
Okay.
of that.
well, I've been in
Can I
contact.
interject really quick, please?
Sure. Ms.
So one of the criteria to amend the future land use map that I had mentioned earlier is that the applicant has to provide evidence as how they're not going to exceed the capacity of existing infrastructure, including stormwater. And that was one of our items we noted that they hadn't addressed as a part of the application as submitted. So I would recommend that they may want to get up here in a minute and address those concerns.
So would this be stormwater? So you're talking about retention, et cetera, correct?
Right, because the stormwater considerations would ultimately
Okay.
be part of the discussion about why property is flooding, if it's
Got
not
it.
done properly.
Got it, understood. Okay.
Well, I don't want to be in the same shape I am with the orchard. They put a retention pond right against my fence that's got a pipe about this big sticking out of it that every time it fills up, it floods my property. Now, I've been in touch with stormwater, the magistrate, and everybody else and can't get anything done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Woodcock. Appreciate your comments.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else tonight that has a question regarding this? Yes, ma'am. Your name and address, please.
Deborah Jenkins, and I live at 516 Dillard Road.
Okay, Ms. Jenkins.
So for reference,
You got to swear to tell the truth.
oh, I will tell the truth, yes. For reference, I am here, 2 doors down from Mr. Woodcock. And with this being a future land use, it is my understanding that there are some commercial things that could be done with the current land use map without altering it, but they wouldn't be at the density that they're wishing to do. That's one question I have with the plans that we have in the future.
That's correct. Let me jump back to the.
Okay. And I get, because for me, when I look at this, you have the different densities, and the impact of a development such as this is not on Nashville Road. It is the Dillard Road corridor and an elementary school that's getting built right around the corner. It is nothing but neighborhood homes as soon as you cross the train tracks. Dillard Road currently, from what I've been told, doesn't even meet current standards for building roads because it's an old road, so it's even narrower than what it would even be. So when we look at impact, I want you to consider really not the Nashville Road, it's 5 lanes. We know things touching on Nashville Road are going to go commercial. But when you start going off of that and you're impacting the more rural areas, you're impacting where a school's going. How is something like this with direct access on Dillard Road, the side road, going to be impacting everyone that travels down that road? People's kids trying to get to school, you can't even get halfway to the light as it is certain times of the day, because all of the neighborhoods where they've approved even more on Dillard Road around, there's going to be another, 100 homes on the 40 acres or what have you across from the school. All of that will be flowing through exactly to where the corner of this development is going. So when you speak to me about impact, yes, there's flooding. We are south of Lost River Cave, and I can show you a couple spots when it floods really heavy, where that water comes literally out of the ground. We've seen it happen in 2015 when the floods happened, because the water kept draining up instead of receding for probably 2 weeks after. Right. So those are major impacts, but I just wanted the concerns that I have. One, why do we have to change it to begin with? Because there's some things already built in. I know there's an anchor, pretty good idea what it probably is. We'll place bets later. But really the impact on the flumes is Dillard.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. We've talked about, Ms. Jenkins brought up traffic in the new elementary school. Mr. Woodcock brought up about the flooding zone and the water retention on the new development. Is there anyone else tonight here that has a comment that's something different? Something different? Okay. All right.
Craig Jenkins, I'm at 516 Dillard Road, I swear to tell the
All
truth. The only other thing I would add, we are also a very large, very busy railroad right there on Dillard. So any of this traffic that we're talking about will be heavily impacted by that railroad as well, because there's a train through every hour.
All right.
So just a...
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
So here's a question for staff.
Let's hear the rest of the comments from, yes, ma'am. Something different?
Yes.
All right. Your name and address, please.
Chloe, Chloe Verkler, 6492 Fortuna Avenue.
What address?
6492 Fortuna Avenue.
Okay. Right.
I live in that little subdivision you can see over there on the right of the red thing. My backyard faces this. Right now it's a big field. So forgive me if I'm in the wrong place to ask this question. I just want to know what the timeline is usually on a development of this size in some sort, in an area like this, because I want to know whether or not I should move before there's a big construction spot right there.
I would say since we don't know the details of it, we couldn't answer the timeline.
Is something like this usually like a multi-year thing, like 3 years? Or is this like a 1 year thing for something this big?
I'd say multi-years.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so.
Clearly that's speculation, but.
All right. Anyone else in the audience tonight that has a question regarding this request? Mr. Graham, you had a question for staff?
Yeah, so I think it was Mr. Jenkins or Mrs. Jenkins' comment about traffic on Dillard. The school is going to be making some upgrades to that, I assume. Am I correct about that? And then the second part of that question would be if something happens here, before they could move forward, they would have to address traffic and all of those things at the next phase. Is that correct?
Yes, so that's the amended sheet you received at your seat. I'll read through that just so that everyone here is aware of what that information includes. So I had mentioned that our staff met with Public Works, Warren County Public Works, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet staff, and the applicant back in December. And they determined that a traffic impact study would not be required, but the reason they determined that was based on the commitment of the developer to make the certain improvements that are listed here. So let me read through those.
So before you begin, can I state that differently, just to make sure that my understanding is correct? So originally there was a traffic impact study required, and then the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet said, if you'll do the things, all of these things that we're asking you for, we won't have to have an impact study. Is that correct?
Correct. Basically, they have determined that in their area of expertise and developments of similar size and intensity, that they have already anticipated what the needed improvements would be if they would have actually conducted a traffic impact study.
And these are traffic engineers, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Yes, and so during that meeting, it was decided that Dillard Road must be improved to the commercial standards as outlined in the subdivision regulations from Nashville Road to the multifamily entrance on Dillard Road. Access points on Dillard Road will be coordinated with and approved by the Warren County Public Works Department, with the nearest access point to Nashville Road being located a minimum of 250 feet from the intersection of Nashville Road and Dillard Road. Turn lanes are required to be installed in coordination with the Warren County Public Works Department from Dillard Road on to Nashville Road. A connection with Arete Street, which is that northern residential development. There's a stub street there. It's not labeled on the map because it's such a short stretch, but that's the reference in this bullet point here. So the pavement design for Arete Street and Fortuna Avenue between Nashville Road and multifamily portion of the development shall be improved in coordination with Warren County Public Works. If the connection with Arete Street is gated, roadway improvements may be waived by the Warren County Public Works Department at that time. Existing entrances on Nashville Road shall be removed. The property will be limited to one access point on Nashville Road, and left turns out of the development are prohibited. And if the future land use map amendment is approved, AM and PM peak counts must be provided to KYTC and Warren County Public Works staff for review and comment prior to any zone change moving forward. So as a result of the submission of those AM and PM peak counts, they may offer further requirements as a result of that.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
Rachel, am I understanding correctly that the majority of the traffic is going to come out on Dillard Road?
No, if we go back to the concept, Matthew might help me out here. So if you look at your concept plan here, there are multiple ways in and out of the development. There's one main entrance planned on Nashville Road that would allow people to turn right if they're going north back into town. There are, for the commercial portion of the development, there are two entrance points shown onto Dillard Road, and then there's one shown for the multifamily portion of the development on Dillard Road. And then anyone who lives in the multifamily development could also exit out through the neighborhood to the north. So I guess we don't know exactly how the traffic will flow, but if this were to move forward, as I'd mentioned, they would have to provide the AM and PM peak counts, and it would be reviewed further at that time. And I'm sorry that this is very staticky.
that answer the question, Mr. Graham?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone else in the audience tonight has an additional question? All right, one more. Not trying to cut you short.
Hey, I know. I still swear to tell the truth. If all the traffic coming out of the development is going to make a right-hand turn, everybody that comes from Buchanan Park or any of the subdivisions south of Bowling Green, they're going to come out on Dillard Road to come to the traffic light at Nashville Road and make a left. That's even more traffic on our road. Tractor trailers, are they going to come out of the development onto Dillard Road to go left?
So I would summarize that this way. We are not traffic engineers.
Sure.
And the guys who write this are traffic engineers. I do not have the ability to tell these guys what they should do or shouldn't do. I do trust that when they do a study like this, that they understand where traffic is going to go and that the roads are adequate for the entrances and the exits and the safety and et cetera for a project like this. It's beyond my capacity to diagnose it, and I'm glad there are people like this that do what they do, but I'm probably going to, in fact, I can tell you, I'm going to place my trust in the people who are trained to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodcock. Again, tonight, what we're talking about is a future land use amendment, and if this were to be approved, the applicant has to come back with a detailed plan, and then Mr. Woodcock, Ms. Jenkins, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name, then there will be another public hearing potentially about the zoning, and everything would be presented at that time. Does that kind of make sense?
And I would encourage all of you to come to that next one, because many of the questions you're asking very specifically, Mr. Woodcock, they're all great questions, I think will be completely laid out at that one.
All right. Mr. Davenport, closing comments, please, sir.
Well, before we go to Mr. Davenport, Chair Warren, I have a question.
All right.
Rachel, did you say that there was a traffic study done previously related to this, not this particular project, but this area?
There was not a traffic study completed. The zoning ordinance requires that a traffic impact study either be submitted, or if in consultation with the transportation agencies, which is the result of the meeting we had in December, if the transportation experts decide that a traffic impact study is not required because they already are anticipating the needed improvements to serve the development, then at that time they can say, okay, you don't have to submit a traffic impact study, but these are the requirements that we're going to hold you to. And that's what's on the amended sheet that I passed out, or that Matthew passed out earlier this evening.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up is, and not so much, maybe not appropriate time to bring this up, but it seems like every project that comes through here, there's never a traffic impact study requested. And so this is probably for another discussion, but I have concern with that. But it's probably not appropriate to address that at this time.
Well, I think for the longest time, over the years, when the standard in the ordinance, it was just a hard requirement that you will submit a traffic impact study. If your development is of X magnitude, you meet this threshold that you have to complete one. So we found that developers were spending thousands of dollars on traffic impact studies when the transportation engineers can sit back and say, well, I already knew the traffic impact study was going to say that a turn lane is needed here and this road needs to be widened and improved in this manner. And so because they're experts in the field, they were already anticipating what those changes would be, or what those improvements that were needed would be. And so I forget what year it was. It's probably been
3 years ago.
Probably more like 6 years ago or more. The ordinance was amended to basically give option A, you can supply a traffic impact study, or option B, you can do what the transportation engineers tell you are going to be required to serve and support this development.
So just real quickly, what we found was a traffic impact study that was paid for by the developer tended to be less than what the transportation cabinet or our local public works departments would require.
Okay.
So typically, and then when that traffic impact study was then generated, they would immediately commit to those recommendations from that traffic impact study, which were usually less than what was desired by the Public Works or KYTC. So I personally feel like this still works better because generally we get better traffic improvements and commitments out of these projects than what we did when we just had a blanket traffic impact study for everything. So that's the full reasons why.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Starks. All right, so we've heard from the audience tonight, we've heard from the applicant, and commissioners, any other questions? Okay, here.
Chair, I would like to address those couple of concerns.
Okay, all right, real quick, Chris.
There are really two things I want to address. The first thing I want to ask you all to do, if you'll please go to page 5 of the staff report. I think, having sat down and listened for a while, I think I'm remiss, I didn't stress this enough. On page 5 of your staff report, on page 5 and 6 are the development conditions that we have tendered for your consideration. And I didn't really harp on those, but in hearing some of the traffic questions, I can tell, I want to make sure y'all are aware, number 9 on page 5 and number 11 on page 6 are those development conditions that echo what the transportation folks said, okay? So, and what I want to point out there is, frankly, those are probably the 2 biggest transportation improvement conditions I've ever written. And so, and they're not done yet. And the reason they're not done yet is that in addition to that, the state and the county said, bring us a peak hour study. The reason they want a peak hour study at the intersection of Dillard Road and Nashville Road is they understand that when kids are going to South Warren, I'm sure that left turn can be slow. As a result of this project, there are going to be turn lanes installed with turn signals at that, protected left. That's what the peak study is going to tell us, is how many turn lanes left do you need? Do you need a protected left turn? What can we do to help that traffic get south during the peak hours to get to the school? Okay? And the other things about that intersection. So I anticipate when we come back here for the zoning, there'll be even more improvements that the developer will have to do. But even at this stage, we're talking about improve that intersection substantially. The question about, and the other thing on that point is, the other good thing about this location is that's already a signaled intersection. Okay? You all know from other applications, the state does not want every intersection at Nashville Road to have a signal on it. That's a nightmare when you're driving down the road if you've got to stop at every intersection for a red light. That's an advantageous perspective or characteristic of this spot. With regard to the stormwater, we haven't submitted stormwater plans yet. Obviously, y'all know that comes later, but the water will have to be protected like it is on every development. And
how about saying the water will have to be retained?
Correct.
On that development.
That's correct.
Mr. Woodcox and.
We're showing on this plan, I think, 2 retention ponds already, it looks like. We don't know exactly if those are where they'll go, but that's what the engineering will tell us. Where, how deep, how much retention. So I hope I've answered those points.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank y'all very much.
All right, we've heard the testimony from the applicant and the folks in the audience tonight that had their questions. Commissioners would call for a motion, please, for this flume.
I make a motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2025-3 flume based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed flume amendment has met the criteria to amend the flume as outlined in LU 114 in the comprehensive plan. Further request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
No.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sissel,
No.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. The motion is approved, and this, again, one more time, this is a future land use amendment. The applicants will come back for a request for the zoning. So it's been approved by the board tonight, and we'll see you all soon. And thank you all for being here. Our last item tonight is Eisenberg Properties LLC, care of Paul Eisenberg, has filed an application to rezone 34+ acres located on a portion of property at 7171 Glasgow Road from Ag to RS1C, Single Family Residential with a General Development Plan. And Commissioners, this will be voted on by our 4 county commissioners, Ms. Drain, Mr. Graham, Mr. Starks, Mr. Volkert, and Ms. Ritchie, our Smiths Grove representative. Rachel?
Thank you, Chair Warren. We had a pre-application meeting back in October for this property. This should look familiar. It was considered by you all, a similar application back in November of 2024, and the vote during the previous hearing resulted in a tie. As a result of the tie vote, the applicant withdrew the previous application and has filed a new application for your consideration this evening. This is the concept plan for your reference, and the applicant has applied to rezone the property from its current designation of agriculture to RS1C, Single Family Residential. The current land use is agriculture, and the future land use map is low-density residential. We do have some photos of the property and the area for your reference. If we need those, we can jump back as needed. And I'll leave it up on the concept plan here. In our review, we found the proposal complies with the majority of the criteria assessed in the review process and found that the application may be compatible with the surrounding area. There are a few items for your consideration at the bottom of page 1. The first being the location of the larger lots. If you look on page 2 under the site characteristics review, under layout, lot sizes, and setbacks, the applicant has proposed that 30% of the lots, primarily located around the perimeter of the development, will have a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. These lots are generally depicted in blue on the concept plan, though there is no requirement that the larger lots be located in the development exactly as shown. Second, looking at prime farmland, we have noted that about 50% of the property is classified as farmland of statewide importance. Next, touching on density, that's on page 3. Within 1,000 feet of the property, densities range from 0 to 2.23 dwelling units per acre, with a median density of 0.10 dwelling units per acre, and an average density of 0.44 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density is 2.92 dwelling units per acre, which is more than 1.5 times the recommended density outlined in HN 1.2. And then the last item for your consideration looks at the proposed minimum home size, and that's going to be on page 3 under surrounding architectural features. Within 1,000 feet of the proposed development, located on the south side of Glasgow Road, home sizes range from 1,178 square feet to 4,318 square feet, with a median home size of 1,989 square feet and an average home size of 2,100 square feet. The applicant is proposing that each residence will contain a minimum of 1,250 square feet of heated and cooled space, in addition to a 2-car attached garage, and the proposed minimum home size is nearly 750 square feet less than the median identified for the area. Looking back at page 1, you'll see that the staff recommendation is for approval, pending public hearing testimony and discussion of the items that I noted at the bottom of page 1. That is all for the staff report, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, thank you, Rachel. Are there any questions for staff regarding this proposal at this time? All right, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here or their representative?
Good evening, Mark Alcott, 1340 College Street. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Alcott.
I had the pleasure of being before this commission in November, and we spent about 45 minutes looking through the development plan conditions, the DPCs. And we made several adjustments as a result, and I thought we were making great headway that night. And on the last adjustment, we lost a couple commissioners in regard to that, but just a quick recap of what we did that particular night. We were originally at a maximum number of units of 112, and we agreed to an amendment of 100. We had two-car garages, but we could be attached or detached. They wanted them to be attached, and so we took about that they could not be detached. There could be, like the first item on the agenda tonight, that they could be 100% vinyl, they could be 100% brick, they could be 100% stone. There was a request for a percentage of the facades originally, and then another request for all of the facades to be masonry products such as stone, brick veneer, and/or hardy board masonry cement type siding. And we agreed to 100% of that in there, and so that DPCs.
On the front
on the
facades,
front
right,
facades,
Mark?
on the
Okay.
front facades, yes. Also, there was a question on the foundation materials. We do plan on doing grading and slab foundations if possible. If not, we won't have any exposed concrete block, and they will have stone or brick veneers on theirs, and that's in there. We had plans and mention of a homeowners association also, but there was a request that we make it mandatory, and so it's mandatory in the DBCs. So that was made. And finally, there was an adjacent property owner that is most impacted more than anybody else would in the surrounding area. He requested a 6-foot opaque fence, and we agreed to do that. So the property owner, Paul Eisenberg, came up, swore to do all those things, and those things were agreed to that night. However, there was a tie vote, and we had a 2-2, because there's only potentially 5 people, and that are all 5 are here tonight, and hopefully, statistically, I don't think that's going to be a tie. And so I appreciate the opportunity to address all the commissioners. The last thing that was not agreed to was we have a minimum square footage of 1,250 square feet. And that is a minimum. You can build a 2,000 square foot home on here. You could build a 1,800 square foot home on here. You just can't build a home less than 1,250 square feet. I didn't have any examples of what those homes would look like, and so I thought I would do that tonight. There. If I just scroll down, okay, here's some facades that this particular house is 1,286 square feet. It has a 2-car garage. Thanks, Matthew. You can see it has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and below, I'm going a little too fast on here, I'm going slow. This would be the floor plan of that particular home. The garage is to the side. Due to the size of the lots are 8,000 square feet, and then 30% of the lots are 10,000. The garage would have to be a front entry to fit and have the variances on the side. But that shows an example of what the size home could look like. This again is the front facade, and then there's one. This is actually a brick facade home. You can't see the rest of this. I didn't put all the photos in here of what these are renderings, architectural renderings of what these are. This is a 1,267 square foot home, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 bay garage, showing that the garage is in the front. And this actually is vinyl sided all the way around in this rendering. It's just brick on the front, which would be an example of what the homes could look like in this area. And then this would be the floor plan of that particular one, and you will see that, you've got a master bedroom. And these particular ones have the ability to put in basements, and you'll see that there's a downstairs basement. Typically, these are not going to have basements on this area, so that would just add more square footage for people living in the home. And so that's just an aside. And so you've got basically a centralized living area with the bedrooms on the periphery of that. And then the last one is this a very similar one, but this is 1,290 square feet. So within 40 square feet of what the typical house is going to look like in size on this. These have concrete driveways in the renderings, and we have put in the DPC's concrete driveways. We've got underground utilities. We've got sidewalks and all the things that modern subdivisions in Warren County have required and expect. Now, we are in the area of influence of Smiths Grove. We are not adjacent to Smiths Grove. We are actually across the interstate from Smiths Grove of where we are. With this particular property, if I could find, without sliding too far, the location, you will see, it doesn't really give it justice. There's Smiths Grove, Scottsville Road, and to the north would be the intersection. It's about, I'm going to say, 0.2 of a mile, is the intersection of 6880 and Highway 101. This is Highway 101 that you see on the side of the here, and you can see the intersection there. That intersection is where the closest sewer is located, and so that gives us the ability for the density. And as we're coming here, this is not a flume change. This is not a flume request. This fits the flume, and so I can address this commission and say it fits all the criteria of the comprehensive plan and all the criteria of the flume. The flume actually allows up to 4.92 units per acre, and we originally were at 3.27. With the concessions, we're down to 2.92. And you will notice that in the staff report, there are 2.23 densities in the general area. Now, as you'll see, this is farmland and this is pasture land, and so this is rolling, and so it's going to be a little more aesthetic type of, it's not going to be a cookie cutter. And so when you look at the development plan here, it's not going to come out that cookie cutter, so to speak. And so that was one of the reasons that we looked at the maximum amount of that we can put here, but in reality, in talking with our engineers, we may not get 100 units on this particular property, but the goal is to put quality units on this property and have a quality homeowner association, a place for people to have what we would call a beginning home or starting home. The goal, as I mentioned here, was putting homes in the price range of anywhere around the mid 200s to upper 200s with the criteria that we have here. With the request of going to 1,500 square feet, that's adding another $50,000, $60,000 to the price of building any minimal size home there. Those houses may be built at 1,500 square feet. I've yet to see any development in Warren County have the same exact size home on every lot. Every lot has its own characteristics, its own thumbprint, and most of the developers I've represented, depending on the quality of how they start, usually start at the beginning so people can see the homes that you're building, and people end up customizing and customing the homes in the back, usually because they want something maybe a little more private towards the back of the developments. So this is something that, as you'll notice, previous council mentioned the 2023 housing study. The housing study said we are adequately underserved in Warren County. This is an area in the northern part of the county. All the developments that have been approved by this commission have been primarily in the southern part of the county and the Plum Springs part of the county, nothing in this portion of the county. And so this is kind of a first into the area, and so we're trying to make a type of development that can be high quality and be a place where people be proud to have a home that looks like the facades that we have here. And that's the entire intent of creating a neighborhood where people want to live, and that's how you sell the homes. And so if there's any questions, I'm glad to have those from the commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Alcott. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Alcott representing Mr. Eisenberg tonight? I think you've heard the concessions that were made at the last hearing. All right, thank you, Mark. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question or an opposition to this request? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my concern
No,
is.
let's get your name.
Donovan Carroll,
Carroll?
Donovan Carroll,
Carol,
yeah, 5005 Smith Grove, Scottsville
swear to
Road.
tell the truth,
Swear to
Mr.
tell the
Carroll.
truth.
Thank you.
The average home in that area is right at 2,000 square feet. And he's going to put in close to 100 houses at 1,200 square feet. That's going to hurt our property value. There's no way it can't, you know. I'm not opposed to a subdivision. I think it would be great if it was like a Meadows subdivision, a Jackson Manor subdivision, bigger houses, bigger lots. I know he's wanting to do a first homeowners. You know, most first homeowners don't live in their house more than 10 years. They sell it, move somewhere else. So smaller houses, you're gonna have turnarounds. So my concern is what's it gonna do to our property values? And, you know, I know y'all have already talked about the traffic and stuff, and it's gonna dump out on 101, which that's a busy road anyway, going to Scottsville. So I would ask that the lot sizes be bigger and the minimum house size be bigger to accommodate the houses in that area. And if I'm not mistaken, half the houses in that area are brick. So, you know, I would like to see bigger lots and bigger houses to meet what's already in that area. So, I would love to ask y'all to please vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Anyone else? Mr. Carroll brought up the values of the surrounding homes, the traffic on 101. His request was for bigger houses on smaller lots. Anything different that anybody else would like to say? Yes, sir. Something different? Okay. Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
Ronnie Wilson, 5212 Smith Grove, Scottsville Road.
Mr. Wilson, swear to tell the truth.
Affirm.
Yes, sir.
I spoke before, and I don't want to say the same thing, and I agree with what Donovan said on the lot sizes and the square footage. I've talked to several people in my community about this, you know, since the last meeting, and everybody's just appalled at how small this the houses are and crammed together. I think they're like, am I right? They're 15 foot apart, if I got that right. But we, you know, like I said before, we'd like to have a beautiful community, and let's make it look good. And you know, I was going to say that I appreciate getting to speak, and I appreciate you guys. I know y'all have a difficult job. I haven't been down here that much, and I can see that you have a difficult job, and I appreciate you. But we'd just like to have your consideration that the developer could go back to the drawing board and give us what the neighborhood wants, what people want, you know.
All right.
And I was going to mention in the revised packet, he didn't change the size of the lots or the number of the lots on that drawing. If I counted right, it's still 112 lots. And
but I think they agreed, is that right, Mr. Alcott, to 100 lots? They've agreed to 100 lots.
Yeah, but I mean, the drawing wasn't updated, that's what
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
But thank you guys for
Thank you,
what
Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson brought up the size of the houses and the density and Mr. Carroll brought the same thing. Anything different? Yes, sir. Something different? And the traffic. We've talked about the traffic. Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
Bradley Walden, 4836 Smith Grove, Scottsville Road.
Yes, sir. Mr. Walden, you swear to tell the truth?
I do. I'm the resident of the property directly south, adjacent to the proposed development. And, you know, you spoke a little bit about the traffic. Coming home from church the other day, I stopped by the IGA grocery, about 1.2 miles, just with the traffic on the interstate with all that congestion now. It took about 20 minutes for me to get home, right? 1.2 miles. The infrastructure's not there yet. I'm sure it will get there. And a little larger house probably wouldn't be a bad thing if it means it happens a little slower, maybe gives the infrastructure a little time to catch up. With that said, would it be possible to request that type of amendment to at least a majority be 1,500 square feet? Not all, but at least a majority. By this on testimony, you can build them 2,000 square feet, or you can build them 1,250 square feet. Can we get at least a majority of the homes at that 1,500 square foot mark?
Well, I think they've agreed to a minimum of 1,250, and that doesn't mean that some won't be 1,500, but the proposal is for a minimum of 1,250.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Walden. Anybody else something different?
Roger Thomas, 4415 Smith Grove, Scottsville Road. I swear to tell the truth. We live right at the intersection of 101 and 68. And even though there hasn't been a traffic impact study done for this project, I feel like I'm almost qualified to do a traffic impact report to you tonight. There are two times a day that traffic is backed up, not only on 68 and 80, but on 101 going towards Scottsville. And he mentioned that we've got 4 schools, Warren East High School, Warren East Middle School, Oakland Elementary School, and North Warren Elementary School. The times of day that those kids go to school, their parents go get them, bring them home, it's going to be very impactful to them with this new development, because Mr. Alcott mentioned that these are starter homes. Well, I almost guarantee you that every starter home will have 2 cars, and the majority of the folks that will live in this development will probably not turn left to go to Scottsville. There may be some, but the majority will turn right and come to the intersection, and that will just further impact the traffic there. The last thing I'll mention is Mr. Eisenberg came and talked to us before the last meeting. We were out of town, so we couldn't come to the meeting, but I specifically asked him, I said, so you're going to connect to sewer? And he said, oh yeah, we've got to connect to sewer. Well, I have since heard that there's a possibility that the homes will be hooked to a hybrid septic system. Is that not true? I see you shaking your head.
It's not permitted.
Can you hear me? It's not permitted by the ordinance. It would have to be a connection to the public sanitary sewer system.
Okay, well, that is good news, because that area is very karst, and it would not be environmentally friendly to have a hybrid septic system. The last thing I'll mention is I appreciate all of the commissioners that will be deciding this tonight. I've often said that the 2 worst jobs, public jobs, are serving on the school board and on a planning and zoning commission. So thank you for what you do. I would respectfully ask the 5 members that are deciding this tonight to think about delaying it and perhaps increasing the size of the lots and the houses. Thank you very much.
And we appreciate all these commissioners that give their time each and every week. Thank you for those comments. Anyone else, something different? Well, I think we've talked about most everything. Something different, ma'am?
It's different, I promise, and it's quick.
Okay. Your name, please?
Angel M. Pierce, 5045 Smiths Grove, Scottsville Road.
Okay, Ms.
Smiths Grove,
Pierce.
Kentucky. I just have a quick question. In this, it lists the property at 7171 Glasgow Road, and it's showing that it's on 101. So is the exit and entry to this development going to be on Glasgow Road, or will it be 101?
When we have staff address that.
Let's see.
If we can get our microphone to
Yeah,
cooperate.
sorry. So the address listed is correct. The area outlined in red is a portion of that address.
So it's not all
So,
of it?
so it's not the entire property that's subject to the review this evening. So as it stands tonight, if this were to move forward, the only access to this development would be on 101.
Which is already crazy congested.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
All right.
okay.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question tonight? So, thank you. Is the applicant, any other comments you would like to make, Mr. Alcott, real quick?
Sure, just a couple of follow-ups, particularly in regard to, one, the size. We're talking about heating and cooling. We will be putting 2-car garages on here, which is usually 450 to 470, 80 square feet. So the square foot homes are, the footprint's around 1,700 square feet approximately, if it's the smallest home available. And so, as you were brought before this commission earlier tonight, a home in the 350 to 500,000 is not being built in this community, in this entire county, on any regular basis because there's no market for those. As the first item on the agenda tonight was a subdivision with a lot more density along the southern part, actually I guess it's the western part of the county, along 165 there, where the new school's being built. The minimum square size went from 1,400 to 1,100 square feet. I could show you renderings of people that live in 1,100 square feet. I mean, people live in very nice apartments that have nice living areas, but this fits the exact comprehensive plan that this board has approved. It's not a change in the flume. It fits everything that we do. And in regard to the traffic was addressed. We went and talked with County Works. DOT was not needed in this particular situation, and so Josh Moore asked us to put turn lanes in and out, right, left, and so we've agreed to that. It's in our DPCs. And plus, one of the highest priorities of the road plan for Warren County is that that's going to be a roundabout at Highway 101 and 6880. And so that's, right now, it's a 4-way stop. As I grew up going to Smiths Grove, because my first law office was there in the bank building there in Smiths Grove, it was no stopping on Highway 6880, it was just stop on 101. It changed over to a 4-way, I don't remember exactly, I don't have an office up there any longer, but that is a road improvement that's going to come in. The flow of the traffic is going to go primarily to 6880, and probably people will go to the interstate because that's how people come and go quickly from Smiths Grove into Bowling Green where they work, to the Trans Park where they work. And actually 6880 will take them to the Trans Park faster probably than the interstate would. And so this is a logical place to build homes that people need and the market needs. And so we're asking the commission, since we're following all the criteria of the comprehensive plan, that it be approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alcott. So, Commissioners, we've heard the applicant's requests and their modifications. Is this something different, sir?
It is.
Okay, real quick.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just think it's unfair to compare something that's an average of 1,200 square foot and building 1,100 square foot homes to something that's 2,000 square foot and building 1,250 square foot homes.
Thank you, sir.
That's an unfair comparison.
All right, thank you. So we have heard from the applicant. We've also heard from the citizens that have voiced their requests. So commissioners, we are now to a point to call for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan docket number 2025-03ZCO. Based on the testimony and the documents presented in the public hearing, the proposed zone map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion to include the summary of evidence and testimonies presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritchie,
No, sir.
Commissioner Starks.
No, sir.
All right, so the motion is 3-2, and it's a planning commission final action in 21 days unless a request is made to the appropriate legislative body to hear the item. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you for coming out. You guys were remarkably respectful, and we appreciate you coming to voice your concerns. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Peterson, just real quick, commissioners, we are, I think Mr. Peterson has handed out our next item. Our next meeting is February the 6th, and it will be at 5 o'clock, not 5:30. We'll be at the Planning Commission office. And Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll do our typical thing for the most part. We may add one more subject item of traffic impact studies, and we'll see where our discussions lead, but it is just our normal training meeting.
Anything else, Ben?
No, sir.
Commissioners, thank you all for being here tonight, and we stand adjourned.